because I have worked with, like me and my team have worked with some of the largest celebrities that everybody who listens to this podcast and everyone else would know. And when we need to coordinate with other agents, right, or in other places, we need that trust factor is the most important thing. It's not even their track record. It's that trust factor, right? And like I've worked with countries. When your client is a country, all there is trust. If they don't trust you, you're gone.
Today's episode is brought to you by my good friend Andy Bovender, the founder of the Bovender team out of the Carolinas. Him and his team have helped more than 5,000 families, so it's a pretty safe thing to say that they know what they're doing. If you have a client who's been thinking about making a move to or from the Carolinas, they are the team to call. Today's episode is with Nathaniel Getzels out of LA, and he shares his strategies in the ways that he broke into the luxury sector of real estate. So if you're looking to and get into that sector, this is the episode for you. In the episode, we actually talk about the Inner Circle group, where it's a special group of past guests and we network and pass referrals back and forth. If that's something you're curious of learning more about, scroll down to the description and follow the link below. And as always, I'm your referral partner out of San Francisco, Shawn Kunkler. What's up, Nathaniel? Thanks for doing this, man.
Hey, my pleasure, Shawn. It's always a pleasure. You're a great guy. I love watching your shows, and when I get the honor to be on them, it's so much fun.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and thanks for being part of that Inner Circle group. It's such a phenomenal group of agents.
You know, that group is so great with between the mastermind and getting to meet all kinds of interesting agents across the country and hearing their experiences and getting to discuss your experiences with them. I mean, it's something I look forward to each session. I look forward to.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, talk about it.
Dude,
Other agents.
It's wild, the referrals that have come through that thing. It's just, it's bonkers.
Oh yeah. It's created not just greater knowledge to increase our business, but the actual deals, actual closed transactions have moved through that in and out of probably almost every state in the country at this point.
100, and not only that, like internationally, there was the other day somebody was asking about Scotland, somebody was asking about Paris. It was like, I'm like, holy crap, we're really taking this to the next level. But in that evolution of getting to know the agents and more specifically getting to know you, I've really come to understand your development in the luxury sector. And so I wanted to have you on today to really just talk about what it's like to work in the ultra luxury. How can an agent break into it? What are the nuanced differences? Because it's not necessarily an easy path to get into.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's exactly the same and it's completely different. So yeah. If that makes sense, I mean, the first thing is like, it's a different mindset, right? So you have to have, once the idea that the main deciding factor of where and what you're buying is price, once that's out the window, it's a different set of values that people are looking for, right? And usually, especially, in cities, but, discretion, privacy, the building of that trust is the key thing, right? And knowing they can trust you with their information and their not to because usually very often there's it's either they're more public figures, whether they're celebrities or not.
Yeah,
is immaterial, but they're more of a public figure and they want that privacy and discretion on your part and want to know they can trust you with, what they want and what their values are, and you not share those, and also not share their financials, not share where you live, where they live, what they're spending, who their their locations, all that sort of stuff. So a lot more of NDAs, but it's not really based on NDAs because there's always a way around a document. The more is that comfort level that the client has with you, right? Building that comfort, like it becomes more like a tribal, like everything in our society is about tribal and like feeling like you're in. So with a lot of clients, they have to feel like you and them are connected, not like you're working for them, but that you're, more in like in the same tribe, in the same group, like you're in.
I completely agree. Like you have to essentially speak the same language as them, as they're speaking. And my experience has been similar, where we don't necessarily we have a handful of celebrities in San Francisco, but we have more of the tech celebrities, the high profile CEOs, and same is they do not want any of their personal and private information, especially if they have kids. They want none of that getting out. Even as simple as them looking or thinking about selling or making a move, they don't even want that leaked. And so,
Right.
to your point, it's a high level of discretion and confidentiality.
And
How do
also once you're in that, that actually brings up another key point, that privacy. And that's where, it's not like as much of a you and them. It's like us, right? We're a team. We're working on this. And also this is actually where one of the places that off-market listings and these private networks really shine, because a lot of that is much more relationship based. And
Yeah.
if you sell those properties, then you probably have buyers for them. And
Correct.
maybe you don't need to have, I've had a lot of clients who say, hey, I want to sell my property. I want you to get top dollar for it, of course, but I don't want anyone to know ahead of time.
Yeah.
Right.
Which
Like,
is
well,
such a hard math problem to solve.
right. But and that's where like private networks and personal connections and agent networks, like that's where something like even Realtor 180 would be such a great asset, because you are automatically plugged into high level producing agents across the country who you already have authentic organic relationships with.
Correct.
And now you can go, hey, by the way, guys, I have this property. I have that property. Like, we have a lot of very unique properties that never hit the MLS. I mean, I've worked on islands. I worked on an island that was a guano island. And
So random.
yeah, it was very random, and it wasn't even where there would be an MLS, or there was no way to list something like that. So it was just, your relationships, right? Or properties that don't tend to sell through the MLS, like a specialty like vineyards, for example. We're working on some vineyards right now, and you have to find the right buyer at the right time, and that's not something you market in a traditional sense, because it's a non-traditional property, right? But so building that kind of trust, and then also connecting authentically and organically with the right agents through your career, and building that is a key tool. Those are two key things that you have to do right. I mean, immediately. Otherwise, you're not even in the conversation, right?
Hey friends, I have a small favor to ask. For me to continue to bring you outstanding guests who share their best kept secrets for growing a successful real estate business, please take a moment and hit that like button so agents like you can find this content. And also hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss out on any new episodes. Now, back to our show. And I think you bring up another interesting point is when somebody's in that ultra luxury price point, location goes out the window. They could be looking in.
Well, it goes out the window, but it becomes innately important also.
Yeah, and I mean, and what I meant by it goes out the window is
The limits go out the window, right?
Yeah, they can live in New York, come across a property in California, the vineyard in California, and buy it tomorrow, and it's like, it's they're, as compared to the normal human, their limitations are far less.
Well, you have to remember, when you're buying ultra luxury properties, right? That's, first of all, it's not usually your largest asset.
Correct.
It's also not the only asset.
Correct.
And there's usually several of them, right? And it's usually not a primary residence. It's, well, not usually, but it's more likely to not be a primary residence.
Correct.
So all those things. So there's a different set of values there. So like, for example, just this weekend, I took somebody out to see a property, and it was a multi-million dollar portfolio of properties, which, he had no interest in really that area or that asset class really. But he saw it and he went, oh, I feel like I'm interested in this. And now he'll probably buy it.
Yeah.
And, that's like it's probably going to ultimately be like a $15-20 million transaction purchase.
Yeah.
That, was not area specific, wasn't even asset class specific, and wasn't on the radar until it was seen. But, so if you look at like an average buyer, right, their biggest limitation is actually not even the price, but it's the monthly payment, right?
Yeah.
It's that out of pocket monthly cost.
Correct.
You take that out, and it becomes more about how it makes you feel. Like, I had one client, he's a huge celebrity, and he would always say, all right, it's just about the vibe. He'd walk into a house and he goes, if I feel the vibe, we'll stay. And if not, I'm walking right out.
That's a California buyer right there.
Oh yeah. But it was all about the vibe. He was just walking, and he'd walk 5 feet in the house. And if he felt the vibe, we'd look at the rest of the house. If he didn't, he'd literally turn around and just leave. And that was it.
It's so interesting. Like, I'm definitely poking fun at that, but there is, we know emotion drives motion. We know that if people don't, and that's across all price points.
Absolutely.
If there is not an emotional hook, they don't take the next step. And that's where the presentation, the lighting, the staging, all those components, because to your point, somebody walks in and if it doesn't feel right, they don't necessarily have a way to put their finger specifically on what that thing is. But to your point, they'll turn around and walk out, and that's it.
And that's it. It's done. There's no coming back. There's no, well, the money makes sense.
Right. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, because the things that are much more amplified in this asset class is the feel, right? The ability the story. The story becomes so innately more important. The story I get to tell about my property, the story I get to tell about the history of the property. Like right now, we're about to close a property that was built for Jack Warner, one of the founders of Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
And the story is going to be so important. It's going to be featured in some of the most desirable magazines just for the story, the design, and the design tells a story as well.
Yeah.
So that the design becomes more important, the feeling of it, the story around it, about it, the history of it, the notoriety of it. Is it a trophy property? Is it something I can brag to my friends that I own? Is it something people are going to want to come see and, increases my status? Like, there's a whole different subset of things that happen there. So understanding that's important, right?
Yeah, the provenance of a property is so critically important, especially at that, to your point, at that price range.
Yeah.
And it's not dissimilar from a car or a piece of art. It's like, oh, it's a car or a piece of art, but it's like, oh, that was James Dean's car. Like,
right.
Boom, instantly puts it in a different class, instantly gives it a totally different value because you're attracting a whole different niche within that. And homes people collect them, not for nothing. And
oh, absolutely. Here in LA right now, a house that was Jimi Hendrix's house is for sale.
Yeah.
And it's owned by a famous designer now, but it's, it will forever be like, oh, this is the room that Jimi Hendrix slept in. And this is, you know what I mean? And like here in LA, I met my better half at the Houdini house.
Right? No kidding.
Yeah. Yeah, we met at an event at the Houdini house, and it's a known entity, and people have events there, and it still has the bust of Houdini, and there's a dog that says waiting for Houdini. Like, it's still the Houdini house.
That's wild.
Right. That one's leaned in really hard into the brand of that house. But
Have you been completely neglecting your newsletter, social media, or any of your outbound marketing? If so, I have a solution for you. With little to no commitment, a virtual assistant can jump in and help you in those areas you just don't have the time for. For more information about hiring a virtual assistant, go ahead and follow the link in the description below. So this is fascinating. I think Houdini was one of the most brilliant marketers who ever lived, and most people don't know it.
oh, absolutely, on so many levels.
On
We can
so
talk
many
about that
levels.
for 2 hours right there.
And let's for just a quick second. So this was fascinating about if you kind of rewind in time, pre-internet, pre-phones, pre all of this craziness, you basically had newspapers. That was
Right.
it.
Hmm.
And so he would have an event, obviously was trying to sell tickets and make his money that way. And so what he would do is call ahead, figure out the biggest newspaper, and then do a stunt typically on the building of that newspaper. And if you do a stunt on the newspaper, guess what? They write a story about you.
Hmm.
And
That's right.
and and then thus it would give him all this extra fuel for selling tickets to his show. Brilliant, 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 brilliant.
Yeah, and then the way that his whole brand progressed was really, I
Yeah.
mean, it still makes him one of the preeminent magicians, and he's been dead for decades.
Of course. Yeah, he's the one that people oh, it's the next Houdini. Like you get likened to that person.
Correct.
Yeah, I think there's so many great examples in all different aspects of businesses, if you will, that we can glean from ours. And when you look at to go back to the luxury sector, when you look at the way you get treated walking into, say, a Rolex store, it's very different than if you walk to a Timex kiosk in the mall. Like it's a completely different, it's a completely different experience from beginning to end, and price point, of course.
Correct. And also something else that'll bring me to another point I wanted to make about one of the big differences is their knowledge of the product is so much deeper, right? Like I love Cartier, right? That's my own little secret that I let out just now on your show right here for the first
Love
time.
it.
But I love Cartier. But part of what I love about it is there's such a deep history to it, and the
Yeah.
people at the stores, they know so much, right? And there's so much craftsmanship and subtleties to it.
Yeah.
And knowing that almost makes the product more valuable,
Yeah.
right? Knowing all these little things and being able to tell the story about it makes it more valuable. And so, and like, here in LA, right? So I'll use this because that's where I am. Beautiful Los Angeles. Some of the most historical houses in the world are here, Hollywood, etc. But knowing all those little things about the subtle changes in the architecture, and like the different subtleties of the neighborhood. Even I'll use, like, we're closing a house on Sunset Plaza, and we sold another house in the Bird Street, which is literally one mountain over from each other, and they're both prime locations, but they're different, and they're different. Different people are attracted to the different neighborhoods, and there's a different subtleties, even though it's literally, 5-minute drive one way or the other, and you're still in the hills in LA, right above Sunset. But there's some very different subtleties to those neighborhoods. Bird Street versus Sunset Plaza, both very famous, both desirable, but desirable differently, and have different styles and different buildings and different histories. And knowing that also is a key thing to understanding, like, ultra luxury, because especially in this price point, it has a lot more to do with the value and changes the buyer. Not just because it changes the story, but it changes the inherent value. And then, like, right next to the Bird Streets is Truesdale Estates, which is known as Billionaires Row in Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
And all really within 5-minute drive of each other, but they're all dynamically different neighborhoods. And understanding the intricacies of things is also something that is much more important and more pronounced in the ultra luxury markets.
I, I agree, and especially not only in the neighborhood but within the specific house, because you're typically at that price point, you're jumping up significantly in price per square foot. and you have to be able to articulate it specifically to the buyer, or if you're representing the seller's property, why it's such a vastly different and higher, significantly higher price point. You have to be able to justify it and explain it and articulate clearly why it's that way as compared to even the property right next door that's a lower price point. And it's
That's right. The details matter. Details matter.
they do.
And, that actually kind of dovetails into a next point of what is so important in the ultra luxury market, which is details matter in everything you do. So details of from before you even meet the client to how everything is presented, to how it's discussed, to the sleek design, because so you have to think about, this is the way I thought about it when I started into this space, because for me, I'm like I have more of a post luxury mindset where I'm like, I don't need to show you because I already know. And if you don't know, if you know, and you'll call, and if not, oh well. But you're a loss basically. But the thing is, in this space, every bit of the presentation matters, because it's how you present the house. It's how you present them to the houses they're buying. It's how you're presenting their property on a global, local, and hyper local scenarios, right? And if you're off on any one point of those, it could cost a sale. And when you're talking about a sale that's $20-30 million, your little, I guess, uncaring mistake, right, that you're thinking is a little nothing thing, well, when it costs a $30 million sale, it's pretty significant.
Yeah.
Right. So while you do have to understand the post luxury mindset, you also have to understand that your job is presentation. So from and so that's why actually, if you look at most of our marketing, we sell everything from $500,000 properties to 30, 40, 50, $100 million properties here in LA. Right. But if you look at our branding, if you look at our color set, if you look at our materials, if you look at what we give, it's all geared for the higher end. Yeah. Right? It's all geared for the highest end property. And that's also the mindset we have is everything we do is geared towards that. Because if you are selling, and it's not exactly logical, but this is how people's minds work. So if I'm selling a $25 million property, I keep saying that number because I'm working on one, so it's on the top of my mind right now. But so if you're selling a $25 million property and a client sees that and they have a $5 million property, for example, they're going to go, okay, we sold a $25 million property. We can handle my $5 million. Yeah. But if all your marketing and all your branding and everything you talk about is selling that $500,000 property, that same assumption does not happen. And it's just the way our minds work. It's true. It's not necessarily logical if you think it all the way through, but it's just how it works.
It's funny you bring that up, because I remember seeing an agent on Instagram, and it's like a picture of her in a really nice car wearing a nice watch. And then I remember, and it's like goes on and on. It's like walking through these gorgeous properties, blah, blah, blah. And then in her story, it was like talking about how she got a client into contract and they like pan the outside of the house. And I'm not throwing shade, but it was definitely not a luxury price point. And it took the whole story and collapsed it.
All came apart.
Yeah, it all just came apart because it was like, it was too juxtaposed in the wrong direction. And it just I don't know how to articulate it, but it just came apart. And it kind of just was like, oh, really? Is all this other, it felt like the other stuff then became a facade.
Right. Once it becomes the facade, then you're the cheesy agent who's leasing the Mercedes Benz and has the fake designer pieces, and I'm wearing everything as a designer piece, and it's all fake, and it's all a facade, and it all falls apart. Yeah. So it's important to be authentic and organic, but also be consistent and know what you're know what you're projecting and project the right things, right? But it has to be organic, otherwise it does become a facade very quickly also.
I agree. I mean, I think it's, everything that we're putting out, the things that we're wearing, the things that we're saying, that's part of the marketing.
Absolutely.
And,
And
and, and
sorry,
it
go
should
ahead.
be crafted. Like
Yeah,
it's things we should be if you're then trying to cater to a specific price point or a base. And I think the other part to that is where for me being an agent it falls apart is, and again I'm just saying this as like an observation. I'm not trying to throw shade, but if everything you're doing is run of the mill,
hmm,
everything on social, everything you're showing me, the places you're going, the food you're eating, like, it's all run of the mill. But then in your description is luxury, and in your signature is luxury. It's there's a mismatch, and the
right.
mismatch calls attention to itself. And in sales, which I've been doing for 20 plus years or more at this point, God, I'm like closer to 30 years. But it's any aspect of the sale, once it calls attention to itself, it's gone. It's
Correct.
it's
That's right.
you're dead in the water. And it's the same thing with marketing. And
Yeah.
I see it so much of people blowing their own facade, if you will.
Absolutely. In fact, I don't even like using the word luxury. I don't like, you know,
Overused.
I hate that. In fact, we just crafted a new video that that it really targets our family offices, our institutional money, our truly wealthy families,
Yeah.
and we took out all those words because I'm like, this all just doesn't resonate. It doesn't make sense. Like everybody says, "Oh, luxury. Oh, nice. Oh, yeah." But it's doesn't. It's meaningless,
Yeah.
and unless you have the intrinsic value. But that's also something that's interesting. That's going to be even more important in our ultra luxury space across the U.S. because we have the largest transfer of wealth in the history of the world right now,
Right.
trillions and trillions of dollars, and the biggest thing that's changing that most agents don't quite understand yet and definitely don't know how to adjust to is so when we were growing up and up until, basically now, the majority of people who have uh, amassed large wealth, right, significant amounts of wealth, have earned it. They did this thing called work, right? They
Novel idea.
worked, they built companies, they built products, they invested, things like that.
Yeah.
Now, the majority of people who have this kind of wealth will have inherited it.
Yeah.
And so then it's a whole different set of values that are going to be important. It won't be about building and buying that thing that I want because I've always had the thing I want. Now it's going to be more about stewardship and caring for the money and growing it in a smart, institutionally minded, uh, safe way. It's going to be more about not losing it than getting it and showing these beautiful things that I've always and buying the things I've always wanted.
It's funny. It's when there's a large transfer of wealth, and I could be misquoting this, so somebody you can look it up and double check. But I want to say it's actually the third generation who receives it is the one who loses it.
Very often, and that whole idea actually comes from something the founder of Dubai said.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
and it was like I'm going to butcher it, but basically it was, you know, I rode a horse. My son will drive a Mercedes. His son will drive a Rolls Royce, and his son will ride a horse again. Right. So the idea is that most people are not, in a generational sense, are not teaching financial responsibility and stewardship of how to keep building wealth. That at a certain point, you've had it so long,
Yeah.
you're going to lose it for your future generations.
Yeah, it's kind of you inherently we just take things for granted. Like, oh, it's always been that way. It'll always be that way. But that's
Right.
not
But so
necessarily.
this whole new mindset of, this transferred wealth is going to dramatically change how our industry works, how a lot of the high level financial industries work. And so a lot more of it actually, and this was already happening since millennials really started buying for the last 10, 15 years, but we're going to see it a lot more where trust and referrals and the trust of others is going to be so much more important. So that really like throws back to authority marketing. And like, for example, you're an amazing agent, right? You're in Northern California and you're an amazing agent. So anyone that's on your show is sharing your authority of being, that like, it's almost like you're vouching for them. Like they are probably also an amazing agent at least in their niche, right? So things like podcasts where you can create authentic, organic trust, right? Because if you've already built the trust with them, now I can not use your trust, but it makes it easier for someone to trust me. It's kind of like a referral, right? The way, like, if you referred someone a client, they have the trust, right? That trust factor is built in. So podcasts are more important than ever. These private network groups are more important than ever.
Agreed.
Being in the right place, building these really, like, building your black book, right? Which I know is an older idea, but the idea still resonates. That black book is more valuable than ever. Because if you have that, like I have people, like the reason I know you, for example, is I have an amazing agent in Colorado, Athena, who I built an authentic, organic relationship with. And then she was like, well, I know someone else amazing, right? His name's Shawn Kunkler. You got to meet him, right? So even before I met you, I knew you were great, even though I knew nothing about you years ago.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, humans want to be safe. And so it's like, if I'm safe with you and then you're bringing this other person in, there's a natural level of resistance that lowers virtue of that. That's
Correct.
just the way our brains are. Everything's dangerous. And so if you're safe, then it's implied that the thing you're introducing is safe. Or same thing, like I'm heading to LA and you're like, oh my God, Shawn, this new restaurant, totally got to check it out. I'm not going to be like, really? Like, I'm not going to question you. I'm going to be like, oh, like this dude steers me in the right direction. He's totally going to hook it up.
Right. Like you already know that I'm going to guide you well. So there's not even, you're going to go and you're going to enjoy it. And you'll probably enjoy it about 20% more than if you found it authentically and organically, like without me, because you already knew it was going to be good. Like you already felt like it was good before you got there.
So this is fascinating. And this has been probably the most fascinating thing about this podcast that I didn't realize until recently is I get probably once a week, I'm not exaggerating, an agent, most of the time that I've never met,
right,
will call or text me and say, hey, Shawn, been listening to your podcast. I have a client moving to blank. Who do you recommend?
Yeah.
It's wild. I had somebody, I don't want to mention her name, but she said, I'm working with an extremely high profile person. I'm looking for a property here. And we wound up hopping on a call and highly confidential information, but she was needing help with me connecting her to the right person, which is like a huge honor and flattering. But to your point, it's this interesting byproduct that has come from all of this.
And it's because you have that trust level. Like I totally understand that because I have worked with, like me and my team have worked with some of the largest celebrities that everybody who listens to this podcast and everyone else would know. And when we need to coordinate with other agents, right, or in other places, we need that trust factor is the most important thing. It's not even their track record. It's that trust factor, right? And like I've worked with countries. When your client is a country, all there is trust. If they don't trust you, you're gone. They even have like
Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, they even have like trick questions in their in their interviewing process of you to try to check if they can trust you, even though the only way you can be there is if you have multiple recommendations from other countries.
That's so
Right.
freaking bizarre.
So it like trust is so important. And then also something else that's really important that's becoming even more important, and I'll give you a solid example of is your specialties. Like, nobody's going to be everything to everyone, and you shouldn't be, because if you're trying to be everything to everyone, you're going to be nothing to no one.
Correct.
Right? So, or you're going to be nothing to everyone. So, like, niches, so important. So, like, right now, we are working on ultra luxury flips, which is a rarity. It's a rare thing, but it's a great, really super fun thing to be in. And there's a lot of intricacies to it and a lot of subtleties. And there's not a lot of people who, A, have the funds to do it, B, have the wherewithal to do it, and 3, have the skill to do it. Right. But so if you can, like, think about if in your market, you were known as the guy who, if there's somebody who wants to flip a $20 million property, you're their first call, you're their first thought. And also, something else in that space, then, if you build that niche, something that's really important, once you have the trust and you have the brand and you have the name, well, then people, maybe they want to also collaborate and partner and do things with you. And that can exponentially expand your brand, and you can scale very quickly using these tools. If you just have these basic tools, you can really scale out your business in that, especially in that ultra luxury space, because it's so specialized.
That's such a great point, that to specialize. And one of my really good friends who really, really genuinely helped give me a leg up when I got into the business, she specializes in ultra luxury flips. And within that, to your point about trust, that contractor, that company trusts this woman so much that she does every single one of their listings, and has for well over a decade. And other agents have been trying to steal it and swoop it. And there's such a bond between her and that company. She performs, she delivers, and she is their business partner, if you will, and it's a non-debatable. And
right, she's just part of their team. She's built into the team.
She is like she is that wing of, she's that department, if you will. And then to your point, within that, when I had my first luxury client, I knew, well, first of all, she was amazing to me. She gave me a ton of her open houses and really supported me. And when I then picked up my first luxury agent, or client rather, I was way out of my depth. And I called her up and I was like, hey, listen, I'm going to pull you in on this. Let's split it. And I just need your help. Like, I need to understand how you do it, how you approach clients, what you're saying, the way you're saying it, how you're positioning things. And she's like, let's do it. Let's roll.
Yeah.
And it's, to your point, it's all because these opportunities come because you have niched. And I think within marketing and within branding, that is probably the hardest pill for people to swallow. Is you should be hyper attracting a specific group of people while detracting everybody else. You should be pushing other people away.
That's right.
If you're for everybody, then to your point, you're for nobody. And you're going to be just a good generalist for here on out.
Yeah. And a good generalist is not a very high paid position. So the other, yeah. And it's kind of like, a general, like an internist, right? Who gets paid more, the internist or the surgeon?
It's true.
And who's more in demand? Right?
Well, not only that, like the surgeon who only specializes in one specific knee injury and has a 95% success rate.
Absolutely. I mean, look, if I have a heart problem, I want the most specialized heart surgeon who just does heart surgery and kills it every day, and not their patients, but that has a huge success rate, right? I don't want the guy that's like, oh yeah, I can do heart surgery, I can do a pancreatic surgery, and I can do I can remove your bladder. I'm like, no, I want the guy that has done 1,000 of these surgeries,
Yeah.
1,000 times, and had, 1,000 successes, right?
This is totally random, but I dated a woman whose dad was an eye surgeon and prolific, like one of the top in the nation. And when he worked on one side of the face, he would use his right hand and trained his left hand to do the other side of the face because it would fit better with the anatomy of the face.
Interesting.
But
That
such
makes
a
sense.
specialist
That's wild. Yeah.
trained both hands. I mean, that's to your point of like when you walk into a house, you pick up the not only the details, but you can say specifically which part of Italy that piece of marble was pulled from in which specific mine, because you know that level of detail to the nth degree, where when you say that to the buyer who you met for the first time, they're like, jumping Jesus, you know your stuff.
That's right. That's right. Which actually, that brings me to the last point that I just wanted to make really quickly
Please.
is something that's super, super, super important, even more important in this space than any other, is consistent education. You have to be on top of, not just for, like marketing and because you can hire someone for that, and not just like your materials have to be the newest, prettiest, most well designed, because you can hire somebody for that, but you have to know the market.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know the styles. You have to know where things are going. You have to be able to predict where it's going. You have to be able to describe where it is, and you have to explain why it was where it was.
Yeah.
Right. And understanding the market and the intricacies of it, because that market, you're not hearing about this space on the news, because the news feeds lowest common denominator, which is not a bad thing. That just means the largest number of people, right? But the lowest common denominator is not interested, aware of, or going to care about this sector because there's so few people in this sector. And you have to really understand it, know where it's going. And also, it's also more important because there's a lot more money to be made or lost, right? I even made this point about why we're paid more in this sector. Like the percentage is higher because the percentage you're making is higher.
Correct.
Right. So, on $1 million, you're getting paid $30,000. On $10 million, you're getting 10 times that amount. Yeah. And that's because the value of the information we're giving you is so much higher.
Yeah. I mean, and to your point, if you're talking about a flip, your margins can get gobbled up by a couple simple mistakes or a market turn. And,
absolutely.
And that person, that developer, will never return your calls after that.
And if you have, because remember, a flip has two risks. It's a risk of what you're going to make, but it's also the opportunity cost of investing that money and tying that money up. And if you're tying up $20 million, right, plus or $25 million, and then paying interest on $25 million, or even paying interest on 5 of the 20, but you tied up $20 million, there's a lot of things you can do to make a lot of money with $20 million. So you better have everything in line and understand all the intricacies of the market, where it's going, where it was, why it's going to go up. And if it's not going to go up, you better understand where and how much and why not, right? Because there are millions of dollars at stake. And not to mention just the interest alone is on a bigger number like that is dramatically different.
Jesus, I've never penciled out the carrying costs of like let's say a 1-year project at 25 million, but it's got to just be flipping bonkers.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about 6-figure monthly payments.
Yeah.
Right? The monthly payments is 6 figures. That's more than most people make in a year in the US. So you better have the knowledge.
Yeah.
You better have the best sales approach, and you better know what's working and what's not and why. And either have the best team hired or know the best, techniques, because there's millions of dollars that will be lost when you make a mistake.
Jesus,
And
I'm like getting anxiety just thinking about that one. I mean, it's flips already have hard margins. Like there's just,
yeah,
and when you then factor in interest rates, how interest rates can change the direction of a market literally overnight, and we've seen it multiple times in the past few years.
absolutely. We're about to see it again. And so knowing all of that, and then also understanding what people are wanting, like
That's
you have
the
to
other hard part.
understand, because the new luxury is health. That's the new luxury. That's the
Yes.
secret. That's not a secret. The new luxury is health. So now you're seeing people. I mean, I watched a guy. He spent $15,000 putting in a cold plunge that was built into his house. That seems like a lot to me.
Crazy.
I saw somebody spend $30,000 on this like cold plunge next to a jacuzzi, next to like something with like natural spring water. Then you have the heat saunas, you have the cold sauna, you have but when you're building a property that you want to get top dollar for, you have to know not just what somebody wants now, but when this is being completed, what people are going to be wanting, right?
Yeah. And to your point in the very beginning of this conversation, because that one person can walk in and say, I don't know, the vibe's off, let's go.
Right.
And you lost them in 5 freaking seconds at a $25 million price point.
I mean, there's a property we're working on where we're like, okay, we will fly our buyers in by helicopter, land them on the helipad,
That's
have
crazy,
them walk,
dude.
right? Have them like literally have a carpet out where they can walk into the house, past the first pool with fire to the second pool, and then right.
Holy crap, that's unbelievable. Next level nuts.
I mean, that house was. I mean, there's wild things. I saw a house the other day that had a wall that just closed. So half the house, like the sleeping sector of the house, would just close off with a secret wall that you didn't know was there until you hit a button and the wall opened up to 5 bedrooms.
There's a house in the city. Obviously, we have very, very small pieces of land, and the
Yes.
driveway was angled, and it was really hard to turn. It's hard to turn your Ferrari into the garage. So they took a big area of the driveway and basically made a giant turntable. And you would
Right.
pull in and drive onto the turntable, and then the turntable would rotate the car so you can go straight into your garage.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, and it's just like bonkers. Some of these things that these houses, it's just off the wall.
Oh, I had a client, speaking of garages, where, you pull up, there's a long driveway and a motor court, and there was about 40 cars in the motor court. I'm like, okay, good. And then he goes, oh, by the way, I've never shown you my garage. And, in the motor court, there's Mercedes, there's Audis, there's all kinds of fun cars, right?
Yeah.
And then we go into the garage, and there's pneumatic, the professional lifts, right? And there's 6 of them, and up on every single lift off the ground, there's a Pagani, there's a McLaren, the special edition McLaren. Everything's $1 million plus cars. And he goes, yeah, I don't like them to touch the ground because they're better, like the suspension and everything. It's more fresh when I just put it down on the ground and then drive it out immediately. And he has, his own private mechanics who come to just his garage, who adjust his cars every week, so they're always perfect, and I'm like, okay, well,
that's next level.
Yeah,
what's really funny is during the pandemic, I showed a property to a client who was looking to buy a house, and he was looking at this specific house because the garage and basement were really long. It basically stretched the whole span of the house.
Mm-hmm.
And he collected Porsche 356s. And so he was buying a house to park his cars.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen people buy houses to put their cats in.
Yeah. That is so stupid.
Yeah. Well, I have so many cats. I had to buy a multi-million-dollar house near mine so I could, put them there. Put cars. I had one guy who he actually used to be my neighbor, and he would just park his motorcycles all over the house inside. And you're talking about a multi-million-dollar house in the hills, not like the things people do are wild. I mean, I had one house where they built a rainforest inside the house with a river and a waterfall, and they had animals running around the house. And I'm like, this is different. This is a strong choice. Strong choice.
There's I don't know if this is true. I haven't confirmed it, but Mark Benioff, the founder of Salesforce, Salesforce is the tallest tower in San Francisco.
Yep.
Rumor is that he bought in a very nice part of town. He bought a house to live in, and then he bought the house next door for entertaining.
That sounds right. Well, here in LA, we have a lot of people who buy multi-million-dollar houses and then buy all the houses around them.
Yeah.
I mean, Drake did that in Hidden Hills. Johnny Depp did that on Sunset Plaza. That's very common. In fact, we have sometimes I've seen where people will buy the houses around them just to tear them down. I mean, even the Playboy Mansion only really sold because the neighbor bought it because he didn't want anyone else that close to him.
Yeah, I remember, and there was like some interesting thing where he bought it and then leased it. He gave a lifetime lease back to
Hugh Hefner. One of the conditions of selling it was doing a life lease to Hugh Hefner until he died. And then they still rented it until they still did rentals. Like the Playboy Mansion was actually rented out every day of the year downstairs until it sold. And Hugh still lived upstairs because the way they had set it up is he had a life lease on the property, but he had sold it to Playboy. And then Playboy sold it. But his life lease was still consistently in there.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So, but he just bought that. It was over $100 million property just because he didn't want a neighbor over there.
I've heard of a few.
I think it was the heir to the Twinkies fortune.
Jesus. There's a lot of those around. I mean, we're in California. I mean, there's a lot of categories. Like there's the tech sector, there's the whole Hollywood celebrity, and everything in between. And so there's cumulative a lot of years of wealth.
Well, there's lots of years of wealth, and then also it's still a top destination. Don't believe the news. It's a top destination for people in the world to come and be here. If you can afford to be anywhere, there's a reason that there's a glut of millionaires and billionaires who live in California. Not just residents. There is a high number of residents in California too, but there's even more people that live here and they have the vacation home on the beach in Malibu that's only lived in for a month a year, but it's a $30 million house that has 1 month occupancy, or the house in Bel Air, or the house in Newport, or the house on the coast of San Francisco, or whatever. That's all over the state because it's a prime place to be because it's one of the most desirable places to be in the world still today.
Yeah. I mean, the weather alone is it makes it just pretty epic.
The weather, the culture, meaning things to do every day, entertainment, the different environmental zones you can get to. I mean, where else can you surf, be in the desert, and snowboard in the same day, like within the same 24 hours without having to get on a jet?
It's true. I mean, the politics have turned to crap, but otherwise it's a beautiful place.
Well, I feel like, yeah, there is a living tax. You're definitely paying a tax to live here, but it's worth it. You get what you pay for. What's that?
There's a convenience tax to it all for sure.
Yeah. And some things are better, some things get, there's pluses and minuses, but if you compare it with other places in the world, I think it's still one of the best.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I do appreciate having the city life around me, and in the food and the nightlife and the entertainment and just all the different aspects it brings. But then additionally, last weekend we drove up to Truckee, which is
Right.
immediately next to Tahoe, and we hung out with the dog at the lake and stared at trees, and it was beautiful and amazing. And having that in such close proximity
Oh
is
yeah.
it's just such a nice luxury.
I mean, within 2 hours from here, for example, I can be in Big Bear. I could be in the desert, right? Palm Springs. 4 hours, I'm in Vegas. 2 hours, less than 2 hours, I'm in San Diego. I can be in Mexico. I could go to, the beautiful island of Catalina very easily, like 45 minutes to Long Beach, 45 minutes to the island on a boat, or 5 minutes on a helicopter. Like the options here are amazing. And overall the culture's good. It's relatively safe, clean, etc. We have healthcare, we have all those kinds of basic needs covered. So it's a pretty good place.
Yeah, I mean, I live right outside of the city, and the boys grew up literally on an island, and the good, like, they had a really great childhood. So I don't regret any of it. Like it's like anywhere. There's categories. There's the pros and cons. But I think at this point for me still and it sounds like for you, the pros still outweigh the cons.
Yeah.
The unfortunate part is the cost of living here is it's brutal for sure.
I mean, look, I own properties all around the world now, and visiting them is fine, but I like living here, right? Like that's the key.
Definitely. So, good point. Well, listen, man, we're at time, but dude, this is always fun. I always appreciate catching up with you, and I'm looking forward to collaborating more and exchanging business with you as we continue in the future.
Absolutely. I'm really excited about that as well. And, I absolutely really love the community you've built with Realtor 180 as well. And these podcasts, I hope everybody watches all of them, because there's something really, really valuable in each one.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. It means a lot.
Absolutely.